Hello everyone, welcome to MLAS650, Autonomous Systems Architecture Studio. This is Learning Activity 16, and this is where we are going to talk about explore what autonomous systems looks like as it relates to human factors. I'm going to run through, this will be our last major lecture. There's another lecture after this, that'll kind of be the closeout lecture for our course. So with this, let me go ahead and jump into cyber-human factors as it relates to autonomous systems and why this is important as it relates to this topic here. So first up, let's kind of define what human factors is and of course talk through what the importance of human factors is as it relates to autonomous systems design and interactions. And then we'll kind of jump into each one of the kind of take a run through what human factors, the evolution of human factors looks like from actually from the perspective of one of the less savory parts of humanity, but it does unfortunately / fortunately push the boundaries of what it is that it is the human condition as it relates to our relationship with technology. Which is human warfare, and it's through warfare, unfortunately, that we get some of the advanced technologies we do. That also advances some of the technologies that benefits humans as well. So it's through our capacity to do harm to ourselves as a species that actually leads to us helping ourselves as a species as well. So anyway, let's talk through when we talk about human factors, we're really talking about everything that in this context as it relates to the human machine teaming aspect of it, and especially the human interaction with, for example, artificial intelligence like ChatGPT. You sitting down and interacting with the computer right now and listening to this lecture is a human machine interaction, right? It's a very complicated human machine interaction, but it is a human machine interaction nonetheless. Your interaction with your phone, your interaction with technology, the very act of getting into a car is a human factors integration point. So we're surrounded by technology, we're imbued with technology. We are even, as the picture shows, we even have technology within our bodies. Not all of us, but to keep us alive and keep us moving at some point in time, many of us will eventually have implants that keep our organs running, that keep us moving, or that implants that replace organs, or implants that structurally support different parts of our bodies to enhance our mobility, to keep our mobility going as we age. There's things that are done to us and within us that technology plays a huge part now in our lives. Now, as it relates to autonomous systems, well, I mean, if you look at the X-ray here, I probably have an autonomous system. This isn't an X-ray of me, but this is just one that's from online. But this is an autonomous system. It's a technological autonomous system that's embedded within the body that regulates metabolic functions of some kind. There's more advanced connectivity that's being explored right now with like Elon Musk and the Neuralink, as well as more advanced autonomous systems that are biologically focused autonomous systems, like the artificial growing of organs, as an example. An organ is an autonomous system. It just happens to be in a relationship in a more complex system that is the human body or other animals. So there's definitely different levels of what that looks like. So when it comes to integrating humans with technology, I want to bring us back to a cybernetic perspective, because when we talk about, especially when we talk about this particular topic, I'm very interested in making sure that we come back to this, that humans human I use this term human cybernicity, and the idea that we are cybernetic organisms. And then I want to talk about trust and reliability, safety, reliability, ethical considerations, regulation, policy. These are all, I'm not going to talk about all of these, but I do want everyone to be aware that when we talk about that, of course, we have to trust our technology. The technology has to be reliable, it has to be safe. Conversations around the liability of the technology when it doesn't work, especially when you're talking about something like a pacemaker, right? But maybe not even something like that that's within our body, right? Let's talk about something that we do every day, which is get in a car and drive. So when we get into a car, we are putting ourselves into a technological. This isn't something that humans throughout time have had access to. Some humans don't have access to it today, right? It's just in America, we have a very huge tie to our vehicles, but we are very much intimately tied to our vehicles here in America. We have choices of vehicles in America that a lot of other countries don't have. It's pretty pronounced here. But when we put ourselves in a car, there's a liability piece to it. But we're surrounded by computers, we're enhanced, right? Because when we put ourselves into a car, whether we kind of take it for granted, but we become superhuman. People forget that. We get into a car and we can drive 100 miles an hour. If you back up 100 years ago, humans weren't doing that, right? Most humans were lucky to be, driving 30 miles an hour in a car and cars back then didn't go that fast. And if you back up 200 years, you were lucky if you were going 40 miles an hour on a horse, if you owned a horse, right? So that's the thing, is that and then on top of that, we surround ourselves with all this technology. So we have enhanced awareness now through GPS, because now our cars are imbued with GPS, so it geolocates the car. We also carry a personal computer on ourselves in the car, that also gives us additional situational awareness that creates safety problems, right? Especially if you're using your phone while driving. Um, but that brings up ethical considerations of not only our usage of the technology, but the usage of the technology to potentially harm other people, like i.e. looking on your phone while you're driving and then hurting somebody else, right? So which leads to regulation and policy. So there's a lot of things that have to be talked about, but we're scratching the surface right now. We will continue to develop and enhance with exoskeletons that the military is using, that they're exploring, with more dangerous and more protective. I shouldn't always say dangerous, but protective technologies, like when a human gets in an Apache helicopter, right, or when a human gets in a pilot to transport 300 passengers from one side of the country to another. We're in a flying tube. So there's just so many different aspects to our getting around in society today that we would not survive without the technology that we developed, and we rely on so pervasively. Um, okay, let's move on to the next piece. So I think the piece that I want to talk about is this concept of cyborgs and whether we cybernetic implants. And I would say not, and I'll touch on this as we go through this, but it's not even just implants, right? It's not just as technological devices integrated not just into the human body, but cybernetic augmentations. We don't have to necessarily implant these for us to be cybernetic. And when you look at what a cyborg is, I'm using a sci-fi term here. A cyborg combines both biological and artificial components, often a human with cybernetic implants. Now, I'm going to make an adjustment to that and say often a human with cybernetic implants or augmentation. That's a cyborg, right? So I want us to understand what is a cyborg and kind of this idea of what a cyborg is. It shows up in literature. It shows up in sci-fi literature. It's been around for a good. The idea of a cyborg has been around. Like I said, we've been obsessed with artificial automatons. So the concept of a cyborg and Frankenstein type creatures, we have pondered for 40,000 years. It shows up in sculptures. Anthropologically, it shows up in sculptures for prehistory, before recorded time. So before humans started recording time, rather. So when it comes to that, I think that's the question I want you to be thinking about. Are we a cyborg? That kind of is what I'm looking for in terms of the entry point into today's lecture. Okay, so let's talk about the permeation of technology as it relates to humans. Now, I mentioned before the concept of the technological development that that humans have created through warfare, and how that both is used for destructive purposes, but also on the flip side, it's through warfare that we've created these destructive technologies, and also created through those destructive technologies that have helped us. So I want to go through and show like what has it looked like in the evolution of equipment as it relates to soldiers fighting in wars, because I think it's very readily accessible visually, and that's something that's easy to access in a lecture. Because if I went from an anthropological perspective, I would be able to make a very deep argument that humans have been augmenting themselves for many, many hundreds of thousands of years, not just a couple thousand years, or 3,000 or 4 or 5, 10,000 years, but for many hundreds of thousands of years, humans have been augmenting themselves. We've been using, in anthropology, we use this term called a techno-complex. And humans have evolved techno-complexes over hundreds of thousands of years. And so there's different species of Homo hominidae have had different techno-complexes that have different advancements both in stone tools, augmentation of tools for use in hunting, for use in hunting other humans, for use in farming and agriculture. As we've moved forward in time, these are all tool implements that we use to make our lives more efficient. So with that said, I just want to focus on kind of the more near-term warfare, so that you can kind of see this the human cybernicity, as it relates to a more modern view of cybernetics and tool implementation. So I'm going to back up to the 1850s and not take you through every techno-complex that hominidae have come through. If you're interested in that, I highly recommend that you look up primatology and look up. It's a fascinating course and topic, and you will get so much out of that. So humans as primates, in anthropological terms, we are what's considered a great ape. We are a primate, and we are a human primate that has developed and evolved the use of more advanced tools. Other primates have developed the use of tools as well. It's not like this is something that's new to us. Now, what is different from us, that is from others, is that we have taken tool development to a very new and advanced level that has never been seen before on the planet. No other animal has developed tools and developed a relationship with our tools, such as humans or Homo sapiens. So on the left, back in the 1850s, if you look at humans, we augmented ourselves with these big cannons. We augmented ourselves with clothes. We've been doing that for some time. That is a cybernetic relationship with technology, because you've got to understand that developing clothes as a protective layer helps us operate in austere environments. Back in the 1850s, we also carried muskets. We also manufactured lead balls that we put in those muskets. We had manufactured saltpeter or gunpowder. And then we had flint, and then we manufactured quite a bit. We manufactured the barrels. The musket is a cybernetic tool implementation that that humans have a relationship with. I'm going to fast forward 100 years from the 1850s to the 1950s, and then you get past World War II, World War I, World War II, and then on the right you've got Vietnam era soldiers that you can see that there's a huge difference in we're carrying canteens. We've got a rocket launcher. We've got an M16, which has brass casings, which increases the ability to rapidly fire. The dude's wearing glasses, right? Glasses have been around for a while, but that's a cybernetic actually implement that not many soldiers probably had. If you think about back in the 1850s, if you had bad eyesight, you just had bad eyesight. There was no way to augment that. Now you fast forward to the 1850s, and then the late 1900s, early 1900s, and then glasses became more available, more readily available, and then they became, of course, standard issue. I would have to go look this up, but I imagine that glasses started to become more standard issue in World War One, where we could have corrective eyesight. That is a cybernetic augmentation to enhance someone's eyesight from perceived poor eyesight. There's opticians would probably have a field day with what I just said. But anyway, you can see here that technology has progressed quite a bit. There's a lot more equipment they're holding, and there's a cybernetic relationship to the clothing adjustment too. In other words, if I have a magazine carrier to hold more ammo, and I fabricate something that is more ergonomically fitting to the environment, that's a cybernetic implement. It's clothing, but it's a cybernetic clothing implement, because it's wrapped around technology. It's wrapped around housing technology. It's wrapped around its relationship with its usage in technology. There's just so much so many different ways you can slice that. Okay, so moving forward to the 1980s on the left, and the 1990s, and as we move over to the 2020s, there's a rapid progression of technology. So if you go from the 1850s all the way to the 2020s, there's just so much more. Like, the weapons are different. There's more technology on the weapons themselves. You have ACOGs. You have that didn't exist. You have red dots, right? That didn't exist in Vietnam. And then you have additional. Now the base. The idea of a gas propellant to push a projectile through a barrel has been around for a very, very long time, right? But the way that it has been implemented and the technology that's surrounding that is quite different. Soldiers are carrying radios, where in the 1850s they weren't. So real-time communication can occur between soldiers. You got a helicopter in the background. That's not something that existed in the 1850s. So, soldiers nowadays are like superhuman, right? This is 2020. And so it's a lot of cybernetic enhancements that are occurring and the body armor, right? I mean, you could take if you wanted to, there's a whole research topic on the cybernetic relationship between humans and boots. You could have a field day on that, and in the technologies that go into boot manufacturing, boot wearing, the ergonomics of boot design, the tread patterns, the advanced composites that go into it, the protective capacities of it. I mean, that's just boots. I'm not even talking about the rest of the body armor, the Kevlar, the advanced composites that protect the helmet, right? That went into the design and development of the helmet. There's just so many different aspects of this that we can get into from a cybernetic perspective. Now, that's the 2020s. This is still pretty recent. Now, if I move forward from here, there's some tremendous, and now, mind you, I'm painting a picture of, are we cyborgs or not? That's really where I'm going here. And as it relates to the most recent conflict in the Ukraine, well, the Ukrainian conflict really changed the nature of warfare. You got a really big adversary in Russia and a smaller adversary in Ukraine, and there's been a huge equalizer, right? And that is technology. Technology is completely equalized. In this case, I've got now humans that have the ability to fly drones and use drones, and in a capacity to, one, surveil larger territories, but also to be able to deliver munitions at a distance in a smart way that I wasn't able to do in the past, right? And this is like recent, like within the Army doctrine has changed recently. U.S. Army doctrine and national U.S. national strategy as it relates to our defense has completely changed based on what's been going on in Ukraine, because it's become so much more efficient to, like, from naval warfare to army to ground warfare. It's just completely, it's so different now, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a giant destroyer that cost many millions of dollars to be doing what it's doing. There are purposes for it, but if I've got a ground vehicle or an underwater vehicle or a surface vehicle that I can remotely pilot, and it costs me $100,000 to make, and and I can remotely pilot from 100 miles away and take out a $300 million destroyer. Well, I mean, that's a huge change of the game. It's a huge change of the game. So it's through these cybernetic enhancements of humans controlling drones that is changing the nature of warfare, but also changing the nature of technology itself. So now, moving forward to 2023, humans are now, I mean, when you talk about the augmentation of humans, on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, this is a new system that the Army is fielding, the U.S. Army. It's called the IVAS. It's an integrated virtual augmentation system, and so it pumps in data. It shows where things are at. I actually was able to use this at a conference. I was able to get kitted out, and then I was able to try this system out. And I got to tell you, it's pretty wild what you can do, and what you can see, and the data that can get pumped into you. It provides a level of awareness and immersion, and battlefield awareness that otherwise wouldn't be able to provide, or that just doesn't exist. So if I back up to from the 1980s to the 2020s, I'm now looking at something like this, where I'm doing a lot more with heads-up displays, with technology that that pumps in data that I otherwise wouldn't be able to provide in other means. Oops. Now, I asked the question kind of quickly, are we cyborgs yet? Well, I mean, look at what F-22 and F-35 pilots, and I think that is, if memory serves, I think that is an F-16 on the right hand side. But if you look on the left-hand side, that is a an F-22, F-35 heads-up head-mount display. And so they have to be fitted out for the pilot. They have to be kind of fitted to the pilot themselves, and get the their diopter and their eye distances right. So there's a whole human factors, ergonomics. There's a whole ergonomic fitting that occurs between the person and the technology is very, very sensitive. But it's all about giving air domain awareness, right? So this is and pilots are really have been at the forefront of this because to be able to fly and be able to do what they do for mission effectiveness, they have to be able to sift through more and more data. If you think about what a pilot is, the future of piloting, it's not so much about piloting as it is about command and control and information command and control, right? Commanding and controlling your assets through more data, right? I can only do that through providing more information overlays. And that is really what we're talking about. When we're talking about cyborgs, when we're talking about humans, we're talking about our relationship to information. That's what we're saying. Think about your phone. You didn't have, you can pull your, every human with a smartphone is a superhuman today as compared to 100 years ago. As an example, if someone says, "Hey, Mike, can you rattle off like where Pluto is right now?" Well, 100 years ago, you can't. I have no idea where Pluto's at, but you know what? I can find out where Pluto's at because I got my phone and I've got access to the internet and I'm hyper connected, so I can put into my phone, hey, current position of Pluto, and my phone will return back where Pluto is at. And I could even download an app that geolocates where I'm at in my phone and point it up at the sky, and it will put an augmented reality overlay and show if you point it up at the sky, here's where Pluto's at, and here's where it's orbiting. It's pretty cool. So, that kind of information makes us superhuman, right? Before, if I wanted to, now I have Chat GPT. We have personal AIs now that can help us collate all this information. I'm perfectly capable of going to the library and looking stuff up. I know how to do it. But now that I have a Chat GPT and I have open AI and availability to get access to a helper, I can actually now go get this information from ChatGPT at a much faster rate. It's reduced my ability to do research so much faster. My lit reviews are so much faster now, because I can actually go collate and coalesce information at a much faster rate and in a way that could never be done before. Um, so I would say that yeah, we're getting there, right? So this comes back to this last piece that I want to talk to, which is this second to last piece, I think. This idea of collaborative combat aircraft. So CCAs, and so you can and so this is really the future of warfare, where pilots are expensive to train. And like I said earlier, piloting is not so much about piloting anymore, as it's because the idea of piloting an aircraft is not that hard. It's especially today, it's all the associated systems that a pilot has to. Flying an airplane is pretty straightforward, but but managing an airspace and doing so in a way that keeps a space safe, but then also can project power in a space is hard. That part's difficult, right? Because I've got weapon systems, I've got radars, I've got sensor data, I've got radar data, I've got movement, I've got activity, I've got action, I've got all this information that's coming into me. And where I'm going is we pilots, the future of piloting is all about information operations. That's what it comes down to. That's what makes it complicated. Having a pilot that can then manage other combat aircraft that are drones. That's the future, right? Because I want to have an F-35 that can control 10 drones at a distance. That's far more effective than having an F-35 trying to do aerial protection or aerial denial in an area, in an airspace. If I have multiple drones, that makes me way more effective as a human operator, and it really does push the paradigm of human cybernicity, because that human, not only are they strapped in with information overlays through their head mount displays, but they're flying in an airplane at 20,000 feet, and then they're also controlling other drones, right, from within their airframe. So there's no way to do any of that without human augmentation. That's why I want to talk about human cybernicity as it relates to autonomous systems, because you can't manage autonomous systems, especially complex autonomous systems, without human augmentation, and specifically the ability to um, bring in augmentations that enhance our ability to process information. So here's a few things that I want to run through. So cybernetic augmentation for medical implants, yeah, we understand that. Many of us understand that. Sensory augmentation, that's kind of what I'm talking a little bit about. Cognitive enhancements, that's what I've been talking about too. Prosthetics and limb enhancements, those are some other ones, right? We're also talking and we're exploring that. We're getting better at that. We still have a ways to go, but that's not far away, right? Being able to, especially with the Neuralink, if I can tap into the brain, and then I can pass in information to a cybernetic implant or a cybernetic limb, directly from my brain, and be able to control other parts of augmented parts of my body, right? So they are constantly, it's really an interesting time, because especially because of AI and the advent of AI and how quickly that has been moving. It's even surpassing how fast I thought it was going to be happening. But it is getting, we're moving at a million miles an hour in this space, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence and cybernetics. Let's run through. I've talked about military defense, but there's applications for cybernetic integrations in healthcare and medicine, and then there's some pieces of it that, of course, I think I'd be remiss to not talk about this. I don't want to forget, rather, to talk about this, which is the accessibility and inclusivity. So when we talk about AI and access to AI and access to machine learning, I do think that there's going to be the possibility that, as an example, ChatGPT 4.0, you got to pay for it. I'm not willing to pay for it, but people that are willing to pay for it, they have a leg up, right? It's a more advanced system. They have it's a more advanced AI, and I can see down the road where this could be a potential problem, where the people that have basic access to basic AI services, versus I think the questions will start to pop up, right? Like, well, how smart is your AI? What kind of AI are you using? Oh, yeah, there's a reason why you're not getting good information or good help, is because you got an old AI, right? Um, I mean, just game it out. 10, 15 years from now, we'll be having very different conversations, right? Around and the accessibility and inclusivity, as it relates to the quality of life for people, is going to it's going to be pretty interesting, in that regard. So cybernetic augmentation is really going to be, I think we have to be careful, because I hope that it's not just for people that have means, but that cybernetic augmentations are something that is accessible to all. So that's something we want to strive for. Okay. I kind of talked through this: equity, access, identity, and humanity. I think privacy, security, we've talked a little bit about, informed consent. We've kind of ensuring all humans have implication, a full understanding of what it is that they're getting into when we're talking about cybernetics. But the one that I think is a little bit more challenging to kind of dive into, and it could potentially get very existential, is the identity, the idea of what it means to be human. I think that is definitely another class, a different class, because I've talked about this before, that humans are machines. We're biological machines, but we're machines nonetheless. And so I think our identity is being wrapped up in morality as a human construct is definitely a more philosophical a more philosophical talking point, versus in my opinion, a logical talking point. In terms of philosophical morality, I tend to take a more nihilistic approach. Doesn't mean you have to, but I tend to take a more nihilist approach. It just is. It's just, we created an AI. We've created AIs. Um, and eventually down the road, millions of years from now, who knows, maybe not millions of years from now, but our ability, our need to want to traverse the universe, to traverse the solar system, to traverse between solar systems, is very, very hampered by our current biological machinery. So, of course, we have to create an AI that helps us to augment cybernetically our ability to help traverse solar systems. Because there's no way our bodies are going to be able to make that, be able to withstand the radiation, to be able to make the journeys that are required. There's going to be some augmentation that occurs. We do it already today. We create spacesuits. But eventually, there's going to be a more intimate um, integration down the road. It's just evolutionary. There's just no way we're going to get around it. That it does bring up some interesting concepts for what is humanity, and what is our identity to be human down the road. Well, probably going to be a cyborg, and that's the middle path. I do think that down the road, as we move forward, I think there's that I think are being um, uh, attached to this idea of this purity idea, this idea of being a pure human, has already been gone, is gone out the window. And so I want to kind of close out on two points here. One, the first one is this nuanced gradient of autonomy. So this idea of us being tethered versus untethered, and so I have tethered autonomous systems, but then I also have untethered systems, and so there's this idea of, right now, as we go through this process of identification, right now, like, our phone is untethered to us. We have an air gap; it's not wired; it's detached, and that's our cell phone. And then over time, we're gonna integrate more and more tech. We already do it today, right? Like pacemakers, right? Cochlear implants, hearing aids, artificial eyes are coming out, artificial organs are coming out. This idea that we're moving from these untethered autonomous systems like our cell phones and computers. We'll eventually be integrating more and more of this stuff. We'll be augmenting our brains. We're already doing that, right? The Neuralink is a perfect example of that in action actually today. But we are marching towards, I would call it, intimate tethered systems. And so that's just our march towards more integration, cyborg integration, right? We're already a cyborg. We're just untethered cyborgs, right? All of our technology is largely not directly integrated into our bodies. But like I said, we're already doing that to a certain extent. But more advanced integrations haven't occurred yet. So, but that's just not far away, right? There's just a lot we can do down the road. And technically there's a lot we could do now, but I think humans are afraid to go there. We've really pushed the boundaries of miniaturization, and there's quite a bit that can be done today, that's being researched. But I do think that there's a lot of pause that's occurring from an ethics perspective. If I put my human hat on, right, and not be a nihilist for a second, the morality perspective and what does it mean to do more of that integration over time, I don't know, but I know that it's something that we can't stop. Humans are going to be modifying. We have already been modifying ourselves, and we're going to continue to modify ourselves unless there's some great filter, some great event down the road that prevents that. Um, but as we move forward, there's a lot of benefits to it, right? We improve our health, we expand our abilities, and then we live longer. There's some challenges, like I said. There's the societal impacts, but I think the more that you go down into the future, the more it's going to be, well, what kind of cybernetic implants do you have? It's not just even what AIs do you have access to, but it's going to be like, well, what model are you, right? We really are going to start asking ourselves those kind of questions. Are you version 2.0? Is your left hand a version 3.0? Is your eyeball a version 9.0 that can see in infrared and ultraviolet? Is your brain a 1.5 brain, or is it a 2.5 brain where it has augmented exabyte augmentation, right? Where I can recall every event that ever occurred to me, right, in perfect detail, right? I mean, there are weird conversations that we're going to start to have 100 years from now. So that I think those are the challenges, and ethical dilemmas that we're right at the ground floor with that, here in the here and now. Okay, so in conclusion, we are cyborgs. We are today already cyborgs. I would already argue, and I mean, you just kind of looking through the quick run through of humanity through warfare. We are cyborgs today, and we are continuing the march of integration with technology. Humans are continuing to find novel and innovative ways to bring technology, to integrate technology, both tethered and rather, sorry, let me rephrase that. We are continuing to push the boundaries of integrating technology both in a untethered way today, and we are continuing to work towards tethered systems where we are tethered and untethered. So, tethered in the sense of miniaturization of technology, but then untethered in the sense of connectivity. So there's still going to be always that kind of hyperconvergence in that area. Okay. So with that said, that is the end of our last big lecture. I'm going to have a short lecture on just kind of a future trends and recap, and that will pretty much wrap up the lectures for this semester. And then we do have one final lab. I'm going to release that here later on, but be on the lookout for that. With that said, keep up with your assignments, and I will see you in the next learning activity.